Happy birthday to the PSVR2. That's right, this old hunk of plastic just turned 1 year old today, and to celebrate, I'm joined by the one and only GAMERTAGVR to discuss all things year one for the PSVR2, from the games that came out, the ones that didn't, Sony's communication problem, and everything that we can potentially look forward to in the year ahead. So I hope you enjoy our discussion, and let's dive right into it. Well, we're here today to talk about the 1 year anniversary of the PSVR2. Now, the last year has been, it's went a number of ways depending on who you ask. Some people are very, interested and excited about it. Other people feel like it's not quite been, what was promised. But I wanted to start, before we kind of get into the years in general. Is there games in particular that stand out to you? Like your big favourite games over the last year?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as PSVR only, I'm assuming we're going to talk about, that would be Resident Evil 8, Resident Evil 4, Gran Turismo. I mean, this is part of the problem as well of PlayStation, that it's the same ones that everyone seems to love, but I think if there was ever a game that really showed why PSVR is different to any other headset out there currently, it would be Synapse, because that literally does use all the features, even though the game, unfortunately, is quite short. It's still a fantastic tech demonstration of what PSVR can do.
Yeah, do you feel like length is something that you like in your VR games? Or do you prefer the shorter experiences?
It honestly depends on what the game's offering. If it's going to be a very repetitive game. Like roguelites, for example, are something I see more and more in VR, and there's not many for me that really get me in there. I really get excited about, because I feel like sometimes they use procedural generation of levels as a way of getting out of level design, so it can feel just a repetitive thing. Light Brigade is probably the best one so far I think I've played in VR in terms of that.
I feel like there is a bigger demand now for these huge games. I would class myself in the more kind of casual area, and that's where I do like those shorter games. So from I know this isn't new to PSVR2, but Pistol Whip's still one of my most played games on this headset. It's just a game that I'll sometimes be in the mood for, and I'll go, I'll have a wee half hour on that. I love games like that just, I don't know, it doesn't, it's not even really fancy or highlights the tech in any particular way, but it's just such a simple concept that works so well in VR, which I think is something that the platform in general does really well. I
think what you said there was pretty spot on as well. You can only play that game in VR. It's a VR only game. It's impossible in any other way. So yeah.
Even if you tried that in a flat screen format, it just wouldn't work. It's kind of a similar thing to Super Hot. I know there is a flat screen version, but that way I just have no interest in playing it, because
absolutely none.
The VR version is just so good and so fun. I just can't imagine playing it in any other way. So we've had the last year, and there was when it launched, a big push for 40 plus games. Let's say it was, I'm pretty sure it was 40 plus, they said at the time. And this is something that a lot of people find controversial, is the library's rubbish, the library's really good. Where do you sit on that kind of spectrum?
I would say, for me personally, I think the library's very good, but I'm very fortunate that I have access to Quest as well and PC. So for me, I've got a huge, diverse library that I can dive into. And obviously, Quest has had some fantastic games recently. What I don't appreciate is the silence that seemingly comes from PlayStation.
This carries over to their general releases as well as their VR. They just seem to have this approach where they'll not say anything at all till it's basically ready to drop. Something we'll get into a little later is they just basically announced 4 games that are coming to the platform, and it's they're coming out in a couple of months, and so there's no, I feel like that's something that when people say that the platform or the library hasn't been as good, I think they're thinking there's not been the communication of what there is to look forward to. That does impact people. I think people don't want to just know what's available now. They want to know what they're investing it in and what they're going to see in the future.
Absolutely.
So I do think that's been somewhat the misalignment of expectations, I think, of the last year.
And I think when you compare something to it like Quest has got a huge library and a massive amount of developers that all want people's attention, because they want to make money on the Quest, so then possibly potentially port it over. So their idea is to just be out there as soon as possible, get people in the community involved, get people downloading the game, for example, maybe playing demos, online testing. There's all that side of this that goes on, which is very rare in PSVR. You know, like Contractors Showdown, for example. Everyone can play the game from Thursday to Sunday every weekend, and it's just all about collecting data, and it's all about, you know, trying to make their game as best as it can be. But the flip side of that is they've said it's hopefully going to come to PSVR 2. When it comes to PSVR 2, it's going to be exactly how they want it. It's going to be perfect.
The thing that always bugged me with complaints about the PSVR 2 library is when there was the announcement that it wouldn't be backwards compatible, and there was the announcement that, you know, they've only been drip feeding like the remasters or the upgrades. But to me, like, it always made sense. It was kind of similar to the issues that PlayStation have had with backwards compatibility with the PlayStation 3, just because the way that the PlayStation 3 was done, it just doesn't work with the 4 and the 5. And it's the same thing with the PSVR, was just a completely different tracking system with the camera and the light sticks compared to having the camera trackers on the actual headset. The upgrade process there, just, it isn't like compatible immediately, I don't think. When you say, like, why not just have X game that was on PSVR on PSVR 2 as well? Like, there's more to it than just porting it over.
Absolutely. Light-based tracking versus inside-out tracking. I'm sure there's a whole technical issue there, but you can't help but still think some of these games, surely they're worth it. Surely they're worth it. Like Rush of Blood, Astrobot, Wipeout. Wipeout even now is still the best futuristic racing game in VR. Like, I used to be a big F-Zero fan. I'm a big F-Zero fan, actually, especially F-Zero 99 on Switch. That is amazing. But Wipeout in VR was just everything I could have ever dreamt for, and now it's stuck on a headset that I'll never be able to use again, really, you know?
That was one that I had to build up a bit of a tolerance over the years, and that was the one that, like, really pushed me to the limit.
It was tough. I mean, they were so thoughtful as well. Like, there were so many different comfort options where you had like shielding in the cockpit. They wouldn't let you flip over, but if you took all the wheels off, it was literally just crazy. It was like barrel rolls. I personally loved it. I've never been VR. I haven't had VR sickness before, so yeah, I can imagine it's awful though. It's probably one of the biggest barriers of VR we have.
Oh yeah. But I do feel like, I don't know the specifications behind it, but there has to have been something with this generation that's like went towards, maybe I'm just a lot more tolerant now, but I haven't had as many games playing this where I'm like, oh, I need to build up before I can get like an hour on the game. Like, it's still there to a degree, but it's definitely like, it feels smoother, and I never quite got the intense like motion sickness that I did with the PSVR. So, I mean, but then that's like a hard thing, similar to the platform itself, it's a hard thing to convey to someone that's not tried it. Do you remember the first time you ever tried anything in VR?
Oh, absolutely. In April of 2016, at London Tobacco Docks, Sony, and this is the crazy thing about when we talk about PlayStation marketing. PlayStation did an event. There was Oculus, HTC, and PlayStation. I had no idea what to expect, and I kind of trying to explain at that time, games weren't really exciting me. I had a family and I was working a lot, and I kind of thought, oh, this is what happens to dads. Dads don't play games anymore because they haven't got time. They're too tired. They're grumpy. I don't know. The first thing I tried was Rigs on PSVR. Do you remember that by Guerrilla Games?
Yeah.
And they actually had a sequence in it they took out for release, and what it was, when you blew up, a machine would come down and pick you up off the ground and take you away somewhere.
All right.
Yeah, and I think people just got violently ill from that particular sequence. I loved it. I was like, this is fantastic. And at the time, I didn't understand what body tracking was, so I'm standing there with a body that obviously doesn't move, but I'm thinking, I've got legs, I've got arms, I'm completely losing my mind.
One of those like immersive like moments I remember was when I played the intro. I played the full game, but the very beginning of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard in VR.
Yeah.
And it's literally like the first couple of minutes you walk up to the house and it's just like, walk inside, walk in the house. But I was looking at it like, that's so dark, and like that door's gonna close behind me, and it just I remember feeling like you're kind of trying to step off a cliff. I was like, I really struggling to do this because it's just it has that.
And that game
aspect
still
to
looks
it.
amazing, and the blacks
Yeah.
look amazing as well on
Yeah,
PSVR.
yeah.
But yeah,
That-
I'll never forget that either. That is fantastic.
to bring it back to PSVR2, is there anything then like out of from what this generation's offered that has kind of captured that magic for you? Is there anything that comes to mind that's been like, oh wow, this is them taking it to the next step?
The biggest wow moment, my first big wow moment was Horizon Call of the Mountain. Just climbing up the mountain, and then I remember watching like the moss or the grass move under my hands, and there was butterflies, and I was just like, this looks like a £3,000 PC experience.
Yeah.
Like this is super high quality. What about you? What's been your like wow moment?
It is Call of the Mountain, I think, as well. And it's like you're saying, it's all those tiny, tiny little details that are like showing up and that when you're climbing up. I remember finding it super immersive when you eventually get your climbing hooks and you're just into the stone and you're climbing up like that. I found that super satisfying, especially when you had like the slow motion jumps and like dragging down and stuff like that. To not talk about something graphically, one of the first games on PSVR2 that really did impress me from the technology standpoint was actually Pavlov VR, because I remember feeling like maybe an hour into the game, like I'm not thinking about how to control this anymore. Like I know if I do this, my gun comes out, and I know how to reload, and I know how to do this. And that was like such a great feeling, having only really played the well, I had a Quest 2 for a little while, but having really only played the PSVR 2 for the most part. It was like technology that was felt so like bundled in, and you had like the wires and the thing, and it always felt like I was always aware that I had this thing in my head as much as I tried, and like I was limited in so many different ways. But this to me just felt like, whoa, like I'm moving about and I'm doing what I want to do, and the technology's working around me. I had such a special time with Pavlov because of that. So has there been like, I suppose this is a kind of two-parter because we've sort of covered the like Sony like in their silence, but is there something like a letdown over the last year for you that's really kind of stood out that you would have expected more in the first year or anything like that?
I think for me personally, with PSVR originally, I mean, times are different. As I said, I was working full time, so I didn't have the amount of time I do now. But I didn't use my PSVR 2 as much as I wanted to. So when I first got it, I remember thinking, like, it's back. Like, PlayStation's back. We're going to get some phenomenal games. But the biggest problem was a lot of them were multi-platform. So I'd already played them, for example. Like, I could tell you that Tetris on PSVR 2 is the ultimate way to play it. It really is, because of headset haptics, eye tracking. It's phenomenal. It's the best version. But it's still the same game that I'd already put 40, 50 hours in before on another platform. So it was things like that. So I guess in my mind, I was always waiting for the next thing. And on PlayStation, that can be a long wait, you know, because it burst out the gate with probably still now the biggest and most important games on the platform. Even now, a year later, you would still tell people to buy the launch games. Now, what normally happens with consoles is the launch games are the worst games eventually, you know, they're like, they don't look good or whatever else. As at the moment, it still feels like we're having to go back to the very first games.
So looking then towards the next year or the future of PSVR 2, I was going to start this off with like, people say that PSVR 2 is dead, and just hours before we've recorded this, Sony has announced in the PlayStation blog a couple of really interesting things. For one, a number of games. I've got them up here. We've got The Wizards Dark Times Brotherhood, which is out now. The Wanderer, The Fragments of Fate, out in June 27th. Little Cities Bigger, out on March 12th. Zombie Army VR, which is a big one, I would say.
Yeah, that's very excited for that one.
Out in 2024. Yeah. Some new content for Arizona Sunshine 2, which is out today. And then Soul Covenant, which is coming out this year. But the big, news of this obviously was that Sony were currently testing the ability for PSVR 2 players to access additional games on PC to to offer even more game variety in addition to the PSVR2 titles available through PS5. That's a very kind of funny way to word it, I would say, but basically allowing PSVR2 headset to be used with PC games is what I'm kind of getting from this.
Yeah, I've actually just made my own video to talk about this because I had. First of all, I was like, "That's amazing," and then I kind of thought, "Hold on, how amazing is it?" Because who is that applicable for? Because like, if you've got a PS5 and a PSVR2, would you go and now buy a £2,000-3,000 PC to experience a games library that? I don't know if PSVR2 would make someone buy a PC. And then the technologies are. I've got loads, so I don't mean to keep going on.
No.
Is it gonna use eye tracking? What software is it going to use? As most of us know, games for PlayStation are optimized for the system. They're optimized for the headset. On PC, that is one of the biggest problems. Everyone's rigs are different, massive. Like everyone is different, pretty much. How is that going to work?
Yeah,
I'm just, and is it also a way of saying, listen, we haven't got that much coming, but how about you go and play something else somewhere else?
Yeah, like the first thing that kind of came to my mind with it was like, if you're not making and releasing system sellers, like just add another way for your system to be sellable. But like you're saying, like who's going to pick, like let's say you're just sitting with a PC and you think I want to get into the VR play space. Do you think people would choose a PSVR 2 over like a PC VR headset?
This is my whole thing, dude. Because like on a visual level, without eye tracking and dynamic foveated rendering, the optical stack of Quest 3, because it's pancake lenses, is better than PSVR 2. You have a clearer image. And people get confused when I say this because they think I'm talking about graphical power. I'm not. PS5 is more powerful than Quest 3. Like,
yeah,
it's like 10 teraflops versus 2.8 or something. But the actual optical stack, which unless you've seen it, you won't understand it, is so important. And Quest 3 pancake lenses are superb and superior. But that's what I'm saying. If you get PSVR 2 working on PC and they get eye tracking and dynamic foveated rendering and headset haptics and adaptive triggers working, that would be amazing. It will happen. People will use it. I just don't know the benefit, to how much of a benefit for the headset, because at the end of the day, my main focus is seeing PlayStation sell more units. That's what I want to see, and I don't know if that's going to help.
What would you like to see or what do you think could help them do that in the next year? And what do you think is like realistic in terms of new game releases or new kind of support? Are you expecting anything like that in the next year?
I've got a whole heap of problems with PlayStation in some ways. For example, the fact that we start it up, we get in the headset and we are met with a flat menu. Someone watched one of my videos. There's an older video of Oculus Rift, and used to have something called Oculus Home, and you could put all your VR games in VR boxes and put them on shelves like a real physical media. Then you would, it was so cool, dude. Like, for me, it felt amazing. And you had a little like Neo Geo looking console, and you'd open them up, get a cartridge of the game, put it in there, and then the headset would appear. Put it on, and the game started. It was fantastic. It was almost like what people would dream of now. If you said someone this is coming to PSVR 2, people would lose their minds because they'd be like, oh my god. But that stuff was there 4 years ago, and they've actually got rid of it now, which is crazy. But anyway, so I would like to see better UI. I would like, and the second biggest thing, or no, this is probably the first biggest thing actually, is a PlayStation VR Worlds of some sort.
Yes.
Something for people to demo the headset to other people with. And PlayStation VR Worlds was fantastic for the whole lifetime of PSVR for me.
It was, like you're saying, it was the thing that like you had someone over, get them to try that. And that's something I feel like I've kind of struggled with the PSVR 2, is like finding the right game to showcase it without, overburdening people where they're like, oh, how do I do this or whatever. You need something that's like simple and just goes, look, here's how immersive it can be. And I do think it's lacking that. And the thing with the kind of 3D all-encompassing menus, let's say, they had PlayStation Home just for like flat screen, like back in the day. So like, why not implement something I really don't understand why that's not a thing, because like you're saying, it comes across as like kind of cheap, actually. I find, especially when you put something up like the Quest 3, where you have like either your mixed reality like see-through menus, or you can entirely encompass yourself. And both of those, either version, you're like, I'm playing VR now, and
Yeah.
like you feel that. Whereas like it's this kind of like half start, like, all right, I'm on, right, but I need to quickly do this, and then I'm into the experience, and
Mm.
it doesn't feel like a premium product to me
Well,
from that aspect.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I would love to see a price drop. I think that would be a massive
Yeah.
part. The original launch, when you launch something that's an add-on or a peripheral or an accessory, and they make it more expensive than the main product that you need to even use it,
Hmm.
pricing it above the console was a big mistake. I mean, they could have made it the same. 450 would have definitely helped. I get it, they don't want to lose money, no one wants to lose money, but it sends a message. And like you just said, you then put the headset on and you're feeling like, is this really a premium product? Am I,
Hmm.
I've just invested more in a headset than I have the console, which what's going to be my main driver as well? What am I going to use more, the console or the
Hmm.
headset?
Hmm.
There's all that.
Yeah, the pricing is an interesting one, because like when it was first announced, I was kind of the mentality of like, they've got the OLED panels, they've got the haptics, they've got like the really nice controllers. Like,
Yeah.
that's gonna cost money. And then obviously there will be an aspect of being realistic about how cheap could this actually be before they're not making any money on it at all.
Yeah.
But I do think even matching the price of the PS5 would have been a better idea. Even like, just it's just the whole mentality of like making something 199 instead of £2.
Yeah.
Make you put it under like
Yeah.
even the £500 mark. You go plus 500. That's like a really expensive thing. Like, even if it's only £30 more expensive, was it £50 more expensive
Yeah.
than the place? It feels way more than that because
Yeah.
it's over that marker.
If it would have been like 499 for a console or 479 for the headset, you've eliminated a conversation.
Yeah.
You've eliminated a whole lot of backlash,
Mm.
which social media grabbed hold of instantly. They were like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, so
It's a tough sell for what is ultimately a gamble for a lot of people, especially since like there hasn't really been that push. We don't really get like pop-ups anymore. You're not going into your local game station and trying out a PSVR2. That's just not happening anymore. And
no,
that's like the thing, because then you look at a trailer and you see what will appear to you as like reduced graphics. You're gonna like, that's moving a little funny. It doesn't look quite as good as the last AAA flat screen game I just played, but you're not getting that. And I
no,
think
exactly.
that's what Sony needs to push. Like, that's what they need to really push. And what I think they need as well is something recognizable, like in terms of a franchise. Because
Yeah,
right now there's a lot of games that are good, but they're not system sellers. You're not getting like Arizona Sunshine is a fun game, but I don't think anyone's buying a PSVR2 for Arizona Sunshine 2. But if you release something like the Last of Us or Spider Man,
yeah,
as an
yeah, yeah,
example, then it's like things where people, they need that initial, oh, it's this franchise that I love, but in VR, like that's the
yeah.
kind of thing that perks up someone that's maybe on the fence. I feel the thing is though, like I feel like a lot of this is a sort of psychology of like how this is being sold to us and how we perceive it. But like when you actually look at the product itself, it's like a really good product. I feel, like it's, for one, like really comfortable. I
Yep.
personally find it more comfortable than the Quest, with just the thicker band on the back. And then like it looks amazing, and the DualSense like on the regular PS5 is one of the like best parts of this generation of consoles. Having that on the VR as well, although I'd say it is a little, when you've got the headset on, like a little bit like, which way am I holding this? How am I
Yeah,
getting this
yeah,
one on?
yeah.
But yeah, like it is a great product, and there are great games there. Is there like a thing then in particular with your time that you've spent with the PSVR2 that it does better than like another VR competitor?
I think you actually hit the nail on the head in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Haptics is definitely where it wins,
Mm-hmm.
100%. Out of like Xbox, and PS5 when they came out with the next generation. I had both. I had like a Halo Edition Xbox, the PS5, and the controller was what changed everything. Those adaptive triggers were crazy. I was playing Helldivers yesterday, and I can hear a guy. I've got headphones on. I can hear his controllers through the mic.
Yeah,
the triggers hitting, and I'm like, that is so cool. Like, that is so cool. So yeah, like for me, yeah, headset haptics. I even love it. Like when you turn it on, you get a little rumble.
I like that.
I love all that stuff. Yeah, haptics for me are the probably the best feature, and the adaptive triggers.
I think if you boil it down to saying, "Oh, it's vibrations," you know, people will be like, "Ah, well, is it really worth playing on that platform?" But I feel like it does make the difference. You know, even like Tetris Effect Connected had some really good haptics on the update, didn't it?
Yeah. Tetris Effect is amazing on PSVR2. It's the best way to play it. And, we're getting bHaptic support as well in April for PSVR2.
You're getting what?
bHaptic support.
Oh, what's that? Oh,
you might have to record this. It's a haptic suit.
Oh, okay.
So it's got like I think it's 20 motors on the back, 20 motors on the front, and you can simulate getting shot, burnt, electrocuted, everything.
That sounds awesome. Like,
yeah, and it's coming in April. Like officially, I think the first game to officially get it is Breaches.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. That completely passed me by. Just to round things up, then, do you think PSVR2, does it have a prosperous future ahead of it? Do you think it's struggling? What's the future look like?
I do think it's struggling. From conversations I've had with developers, sales numbers are. I think, as far as I know, the PSVR2 has sold over 1 million or around 1 million now. But retention has been a real problem. And sales are lower than most have expected. So the unfortunate thing I think what's going to happen next year, unless they are exclusive, is games are still more than ever going to come to Quest first, maybe PC, and then PSVR2 last.
Yeah.
That's the unfortunate reality, I think, at the moment. But the good thing is all developers want to put it on as many platforms as possible. So, yeah. Do I think it's... I've actually got a bet with Mike from the VR Oasis over some chicken wings that 10 PlayStation VR2 exclusive games are going to come out by the end of the year, which is stupid. That's
a bold claim there.
I'm going to lose. But even if we get 3 or 4, I'm happy to buy the chicken. I'm excited for Metro VR.
That's the one that I'm like really looking. I perked when I saw Vertigo. I was like, what they got?
We'll probably be there.
Would they cook it up? And then when it was Metro, like you put Arizona's like handling of guns with like a tense atmospheric game. Oh mate, I am there day one for that one. So yeah, I mean that's been our wee chat. PSVR2 1 year old. Thank you so much for joining me, GamerTag.
Thank you very, very much for inviting me, man. Like, I've absolutely loved it. It's great. It's weird in this space. You don't get to talk to many people about this stuff, so I really appreciate it. Thank you.
No, anytime.